Blessed Be, Namaste, and welcome back to Akashic Song. I am Akasha Indigo Ray, and I am gonna try, if I don't get any more interruptions, to knock out this K is for Kindred video. And got some notes, some handy dandy notes here to try to keep me on track, and I keep setting a goal to not make a video that's longer than 15 minutes, and then I keep making 25, 35-minute videos. So again, instead of setting that goal, I'm gonna say, you know, I have talking points so that I don't go off script, and hopefully it is what it is. Got my Hello Kitty mug for good luck. It's really hot. Pomegranate, I think it's pomegranate apple. Pomegranate apple tea, so good. You guys, for Mabon, I made a, well, I eat vegan chicken, so like unchicken. So I made like an unchicken salad, and I put fresh corn on the cob and pomegranate seeds, like from an actual me opening a pomegranate after offering. It was so good. I should have filmed that. I don't know why I didn't, but you know what? I think the reason I didn't is because being a working witch, if everything you do becomes something that you can film and share, you kind of start, I don't know, I could see losing some interest in doing all the things that you do, because everything has to be something that's share worthy or something that you can talk about or film it or whatever. So I was just in the moment, I guess, and I decided to do some kitchen witching, which I've been doing a lot more of lately. So anywho, ABCs of Witchcraft. K is for Kindred. I want to talk about the different types of kindred in my practice and how I hold those realities. So I broke it up into a couple different categories, and the first is blood/born and chosen family. So blood family or born family is the family that I'm born into. On my maternal side is mostly Catholic. On my paternal side is Christian of varying denominations. We even have some Jehovah's Witness folks. And I've talked before about my father being a minister of New Thought, which is, I don't want to say progressive Christianity, but it's kind of like Christianity with a lot of mysticism and law of attraction, like hermeticism kind of thrown in, some alchemy thrown in there. So he is a minister in that regard. Sorry, just checking a candle. I'm filming in my living room, which I never do. I just moved my altar back out here, so I'm just kind of trying to like reset the energy around the altar since it's in a new place. It's the same altar, but I just moved it into the living room. So I'm just kind of watching things over there. Anyway, so as a gray witch, I don't believe in doing magic that's all black or all white. I know you've probably heard that term before thrown around. Gray witch just basically means I do whatever magic is appropriate for the situation or the circumstances that I find myself in. But specifically around family, chosen and blood. Chosen being friends, community members, people who you've gotten really close to. You know, somebody that you might call, oh, that's my sister, my coven sisters. I don't like witching on their behalf without their consent. That being said, my mother is the only one who I've ever done any kind of working for without specifically telling her that I was going to do something to support her in some illness that she was working through. And I think that's because, one, I think if you don't really have a deep understanding of what witchcraft is, it sounds scary when you try to, I don't know, I feel like the ways in which I was and am able to support her, if I give her the details, it might seem strange, coming from a Catholicism background, which I know Catholicism is very ritualistic and all of that. But I think when you're a hardcore Catholic, not like, you know, there's some Santeria or any, like when you're a hardcore Catholic, it's kind of like, I don't know about what you're talking about. So I never did a spell on her behalf, but I did some workings to just kind of give her peace of mind around things. And I think of it kind of like how a Christian might say, I'm going to pray for you, or do you mind if I pray for you? I kind of posed it the same way. It's like, oh, I'm going to take you into my meditation. Or if someone tells me I'm feeling, a chosen family member might tell me I'm going through a hard time financially, I may say, oh, you know, I'm happy to bring you into the peace of my meditation. I'm happy to bring you into, I do ritual work for inviting abundance. Would you like me to share some of that with you? And then I may tell them about different methods that I have for stimulating abundance. I might talk about Lakshmi and keeping green aventurine on you, having a money tree in the corner, you know, the right corner of your home, all of that kind of stuff. But also saying, I'm going to take you into my meditation and kind of not pray for you, but my father calls it speaking the word. It's where you speak the word of manifestation for another person. Okay. The next group I want to talk about of kindred for me is ancestors and orishas. So in one of my most recent videos, I talked about how I found out my, I went through ancestry.com and I found out my heritage and what parts specifically of Africa my bloodline stems from. And not just Africa. My bloodline was going across a lot of different places. I found some interesting things like Polynesia. Really interesting. But what it gave me was a sense of credibility in creeping into studying some of the African spiritual traditions, and so much of it is so beautiful, y'all. Like I'm not ready to fully talk about it here because I'm still really doing that research and connecting with other people who are practicing Ifa and Yoruba and Lukumi and Santeria and all this kind of stuff, but I'm specifically focusing on Ifa and learning a lot of that tradition. And it's a very different, it's not a different, it's the names of things are very different, and I've been able to take that on very quickly. But as I said before, I'm blending it into my current witchcraft practice. So I've not become some other thing. I'm still a witch. I'm kind of teetering on dropping Wiccan, to be honest, but that's still, it is what it is. But I started learning a lot more about the African spiritual traditions, and specifically traditions that come out of Yoruba land, Benin, Togo, and there's a lot of ancestral veneration. And I thought that was really interesting because I've always had a very close relationship with both of my grandmothers, my maternal and paternal grandmothers, and my maternal grandfather, but my paternal grandfather passed away when I was a lot younger, so I didn't have as much, I don't have memories of him specifically, but I do have some items that were passed down to me as people transitioned out of the body and back into the spirit. So I have a watch from my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the cat. I have a brooch from my maternal grandmother, and I have a ring from my paternal grandmother. I won't say their names, but part of my practice has been keeping an area of my home that is for doing veneration. Veneration just meaning recognizing them, sending them some love, sending some energy out into the universe on their behalf, or just connecting with them. I got a reading done several months back when I was trying to clear some old stagnant energy out of my spirit. And what my guide told me, specifically Lakshmi, told me, you're gonna need your ancestors for what you're trying to do. A lot of what I was releasing was generational trauma. And they said, you're gonna need your ancestors for that. And some of the things that I wanted to call in, same thing, you're gonna need your ancestral support for what you're trying to release and what you're trying to call in. So I had always kind of kept pictures of my grannies and my great-grandmothers. I was given some stones from Sedona that are ancestral stones. They're volcanic stones, and you're meant to channel the spirits of your ancestors or have that be a holding place for them. So I've always had that on my altar since that was given to me a few years ago. But then I added items that belonged to them that were passed down to me, and just created a little space for them with flowers and things. And I would put it, it didn't quite resonate with me to give them water. I know that that's something that's done in various traditions to put out glasses of water for your ancestors. I know that that's done in Santeria. It didn't quite resonate with me, so at first I would put, I gave my grandfather, the one who I didn't grow up with, I gave him some vodka because one thing that I knew was that he liked alcohol. So I gave him a little tiny jar of vodka, and I felt like, okay, that feels okay to me. So I don't put living libations up there unless I'm specifically offering a prayer for something. And I've been keeping them in my bedroom. I have a little shelf on the wall where I keep my speaker. I have like a little subwoofer and another set of smaller speakers because we play the iPad all night on Audible because we're nerdy, and I like to hear it in a better sound, being the musician that I am. So I've been keeping them on top of the boxy like subwoofer, which I think is perfect because my family is extremely musical. Both of my grandmothers played piano, and both of them sang in church and stuff like that. And so it felt appropriate to have them be a part of, or to be in a place that inspires the musical legacy that I inherited. So currently the only work I do with my ancestors is more like on a certain day when I'm doing different types of ritual. I will go over, I'll light a candle for them. I will recognize them, I'll say hello to them. And specifically when All Hallows Eve, when Samhain rolls around, I'm not sure if I'm gonna do a dumb supper, but I watched the movie Coco, which if you haven't seen Coco, it's so fantastic. It's a movie for kids, I imagine. It's like a Pixar film, I think. But I love that they talk about the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, and that the one day the spirits can cross over, but you have to have pictures of them on your altar for them to cross over. So I'm gonna put the pictures back out of my ancestors. I want to frame them and put them on the wall. That's the only reason I took them down, is because I want to frame them. So I do definitely want to invite them to cross over the veil if they have any information to share with me about the stuff that I was letting go and the stuff that I want to call in. So I'm going to do some ritual with them on Samhain. It's also my anniversary, so we'll see what I end up doing, but I definitely want to reserve some time to do that. With the Orishas, I haven't gotten fully into doing, I know that the way the Yoruba system is set up, you're supposed to actually work with all of them. You may have one that rules your head, which for me, that's Oshun, but you also work with the other Orishas in their various roles that they take on. They're kind of, I don't want to say they're like elementals, but they rule over different elements, if that makes sense. So Oshun specifically rules over the sweet water. So I have a ritual that I do every morning, really, really short, but it allows me to kind of sing a song to her, and to call her into my day and thank her for being a guide for me. And her day is Thursdays, and so on Thursdays I will offer some libation to her. I've been giving her Goldschlager liquor because it's got little gold flakes in it. It's really cute. And it's so funny that when I was a kid, or not a kid I should say, but when I was like first hitting drinking age, like 21, 22, something like that, one of the first parties that I went to and had liquor, I had Goldschlager, and I remember thinking like, oh, that's so pretty, I want to drink that. And then it was just like straight up cinnamon, and I was like, that's intense. But one thing in the storyline, in the mythology of Oshun, you are supposed to taste everything that you give her. So I'll pour it in, I'll stick a cinnamon stick and kind of stir a tiny bit of honey in with it, let it sit, and then I come back to it either at the end of the night or 5 hours later. Like I do different things, but I always make it before the next full evening. I drink the libation and give it to her through my spirit. She's already received it energetically, and then I pass it through my body as an offering. So that's how I kind of hold the Orisha ancestral kindred part of my practice. The last area is that the last area? I'll cut my notes. Yeah. So this last area is a little bit quirky, and I almost hesitate to share this with you at the 16-minute mark, but you know, I'm nothing if not quirky. So otherkin. Have you heard of otherkin? Have you heard of this? So otherkin is basically where people feel that they have had past lives in a different form. So some people identify with being the embodiment of a star child, right? Like I come from, or my original soul, or one of my existences, however you want to see that, was in the Pleiadian star system. So I'm a Pleiadian star seed. And in a human form now, I've chosen to come to I'm not saying this about me, the person, chosen to come to this planet in this body, and you have remembrances of other bodies you've been in, or other experiences that you had where you looked different, or you felt different, or the people around you looked different, and you knew something else was going on. Most of the time when you encounter people who say that they are otherkin, they what I've seen the most often is people who identify with wolves, werewolves, vampires, unicorns, various undines. People identify with having been a mermaid or having been a dolphin. It's really interesting. There's a lot of forums, and the funny thing is you'll find so many. If this sounds like you will remember so many instances in your life where you can clearly look at it and go, no wonder, right? So it's getting quirky, but this is actually what deepened my relationship with the Fae. I have had a fairy guide since my early 20s. It took me a long while to actually ask their name, and I say they because they came to me as a collective consciousness, and they said specifically, when you elevate past a certain incarnation, you no longer need individuated consciousness. You will become a collective. And so I knew that I was talking to one particular fairy, but I couldn't identify them as being wholly feminine or wholly masculine, and they spoke in terms like, we want to share this with you, or you know, we appreciate you connecting with us, you know, that kind of talk. I also identify with being a starseed, but honestly, we all are. We all are. We have all lived someplace else. Okay, this planet was seeded on purpose. You can go look at David Icke's work, and you can get all into that. You can go check out Seven Bomar's videos and get all into that stuff. But this planet was specifically seeded, and so we're not all from the planet Earth originally. Most, almost all of us came from somewhere else, okay? So we're all starseeds. And I have specific star systems that I connect with, but right now I want to talk about the fairy stuff. So, since my childhood, I've identified with various forms of fairies. So the sylphs are the winged fairies. I've had connections with butterflies since I was a kid. I've talked a lot about butterflies in my videos. I have a very strong butterfly dragonfly thing happening, and it's always been. Salamanders are in the Middle Eastern pantheons. They call them jinn, D-J-I-N-N. So they're kind of like genies, but they're fire elementals. They're also the dragon spirits. I have a dragon guide who came to me about 6 or 7 years ago now. And so I've been working with her. Her name is Solaris, and she's a shapeshifter. She is woman, but then she also becomes a dragon. And every time I go through my meditations and I go to Alfheim, which is the fairyland, she always comes and is kind of like my escort, bringing me there. The undines are water sprites, or mermaids. They're also a type of undine. Selkies, definitely. Selkies are, I believe they are seals. No. They shift between being a water mammal and a human, but they're usually always female. I have a very strong water connection. I've talked about that before. It's part of why Oshun came to me. I don't identify with being a mermaid, but I have had some very groovy experiences in rivers and lakes connecting with undine energy. And gnomes. So gnomes are the earth fae. And they're not just the gnomes with the hats that you see when people have like little lawn gnomes or whatever. They include flower fae, stone folk, dryads, which are tree spirits, tree nymphs, and elves, the sylvan folk or forest fairies. So you might think of having watched J.R.R. Tolkien's, or not, read J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings series, or seen any of those movies. So the elves there. So elves, not meaning the little tiny tree people that make cookies and that's a stupid thing, but they're a different race of fae. And I identify with the elven consciousness. And it was hard for me to come to that because I didn't feel very earthy. I've always felt very airy, very watery, and then fire claimed me when I was going through my initiation. But when I started deepening my work with the Fairy Queen, one of the meditations that I was in, she asked, who will claim her? You know, so like when you're just traipsing into Alfheim, you know, what are you here to do? Why should we trust you? Are you gonna make a mess, you know, spiritually? And one of the elves said the earth claims her. And it was almost like this, something kind of rose up in my body that I felt like, that makes so much sense to me. And I never could figure out why, because I'm not a very earthy person, but I was like, wow, that's not what I expected, but it makes so much sense. And I started talking again with the the earthy fae who I had been talking with for years. I call her Arya. And I asked Arya, A-R-Y-I-A, Arya. I asked her, I asked them, why do you help me? You know, why do you talk to me? Because it seems like people keep telling me that fairies aren't really that fond of human beings. Like, why are you helping me for real? And the response I got was, wait, I wrote it down. You're kin to us. We remember you in a different form. We remember your old body. Do you remember us? And whew, that went through me. I was like, yeah. And I had these memories that I could never quite place of seeing myself on in another realm or of some sort, and on a different planetary body of some sort, dancing in the water, and we were celebrating this other being, and it seemed like a female, it seemed like a crone, long silver hair, and she was dancing in the center, and we were playing water. Like, if you've seen those videos of African women who drum on the water, we were doing that. We were going around, and this was, you guys, this was probably about 5 years ago that I had this vision, 5 or 6 years ago, of myself playing water drums in a circle, in a cipher, with a bunch of other elves. I don't know, a bunch of other fairies doing this. And the crone we were celebrating was like in the center getting it. And I was like, hey, this is so cool. And all of those things started flooding back. And I started doing all of this research about, could I be an elf? Was I a fairy in another life? All this stuff. And that's where the otherkin forums started popping up, and it was something that I had not heard of, but it's so funny. I know a friend who identifies with fox energy. I know somebody that I hang out with that very clearly I can see cat energy in her, and it's like, wow. And I don't know, you may wonder what's the point of this, but I think the point is, until you know fully who you are and where you come from, you won't know what's possible for you. Because for some of us, we look at being in human form as limiting. Oh, I'm so stuck in this body. I can't do the things I want to do. I'm limited by, you know, what I want to experience and what I can do. But to hold in your mind who I was before, who's related to me, where my ancestry comes from, how am I connected to these deities over here, or this body used to be very different. I think it starts to open up your consciousness where you can step outside of the limitations of the physical form. So, with all that said, don't come for me in the comments with, this bitch is crazy thinking she's a fairy. I'm not trying to hear it. If you think that that's too far-fetched and too nutty, that's okay. Just breeze on by. But I do encourage you to do past life regressive meditations. Tap into your Akashic records, see who you've been, because it does make a big difference in the way that you connect here. For me, remembering kinship with the Fae has deepened my walk with them, has given me more comfort in calling them into ritual when I'm doing a spell or when I'm casting circle. I no longer feel this trepidation of calling on them, because it's like, oh, I'm just basically asking my homies to join me. They already know who I am. You know what I mean? So I think that finding these different webs of kinship for me, of kindred, has really helped me to carve out a very personalized spiritual practice that allows me to continue to grow and develop in these other ways. That's all I have to say. 28 minutes in. I love you, and I'm so grateful to have this space to share my practice with you and to not feel alone with all of this stuff. And I would love to hear in the comments below if you connect with the otherkin movement, if any of this resonates with you and you can feel very clearly that you have kinship that is a completely different type than human. Blessed be. Have a wonderful, wonderful whatever it is for you right now. It's about 8:30 right now. I'm getting ready to go watch. It's 8:30 on Sunday, and I'm about to go watch Insecure on HBO because that's my jam. I love you. Blessed be. Namaste.